Hi, John with eTrailer. Today we're taking a look at and installing the RoadActive Suspension Enhancement Kit on our 2021 Ford F-150. So these kits come as a pair and they come fully assembled from RAS. They sit on top of your spring. There's nothing, no cutting, no welding. They simply sit on your leaf spring and bolt up at the shackle on the inside. Now they're going to provide you either 25% or 40% more load leveling capability. Now one of the reasons I like this kit is because they come sold as a pair and fully assembled. Also, there's no cutting or drilling required. They simply sit on top of your existing leaf springs. They latch on at the back, they go over, and the other connecting point is at the front of the axle here. From the factory, these are fully adjustable with two different settings. One is 25% more leveling capacity, the other is 40% more leveling capacity, and it only takes a 24mm wrench and a 14mm socket to adjust between it back and forth, and you can adjust these at any time. Once they're adjusted, they're set. You don't have to worry about air leaks like on airbags. So what's the bottom line on this system like this versus airbags? Well, these are significantly easier to install. Again, you don't have to worry about air leaks or anything else. This is a set it and forget it kind of a system. If you need to adjust later on, you can. Also, this will help with a little bit of wheel hop if your wheels start to spin, say pulling out of a boat dock or something like that. Airbags do not. One more thing to take note of. You're not going to get the same type of leveling effect with this system as you would with an airbag system. If you're looking to level your ride completely back to factory specs, go with an air ride system. But if you're looking for a system that will reduce your wheel hop, give you an easy install, this is the system for you. Let's go ahead and take a look at some footage before we install the enhancement system and after. So just to set a baseline before the install on these springs, we went ahead and loaded 1,650 pounds into the back of this, which is roughly half of what the vehicle can handle. And you can see it's squatting heavy in the back, the front is lifted, so we're going to have reduced weight on the front axle, which is our steer axle. We're going to have heavy sway in the back, but we're going to go take it out on our test course and let you see what it's going to do. So right off the bat, just getting in before we even go to the test course, I can already see that the front is way high. Our headlights are going to be aiming way too high to go down the road. We have some live footage here that's going to show you what the springs are going to do. There's no need to do any evasive maneuvering or anything right now. The simple fact of the matter is our springs are working, and they're working hard. And when they're working hard, you're not going to get the same kind of handling, the same kind of ride performance or anything like that. And that's what these springs are designed to help out with. There's quite a bit of sway. We have our bumps staggered, so we get body roll. So this is just one of those things where we're just going to show you how it is. And this is factory suspension, and these trucks do a good job. So you saw what the stock suspension looked like carrying this weight over the test course. Now, with the suspension enhancement installed, let's take it back out and see what it does. Okay, so we have our suspension system on there now, and we've put the weight back on. Now, truth be told, this is probably not an ideal situation. We have the weight to the rear of the axle, but it was interesting to note that with our suspension system on, it was able to raise this up an inch. So we're going to go ahead and take it over our test track right now and see if we notice any differences. Okay, so first impressions, again, once we got in the vehicle, you can tell that it's sitting a little bit better. Again, this isn't going to be like an air ride system or an air spring system to where it levels the vehicle out completely no matter what. This is an active mechanical system. And so as we take it over our bumps here, you can definitely tell, even though this is a large liquid load in the back, that we have a little bit better sway left to right control, and that the springs have a little bit of help with the bumps. It's not nearly as jarring. If you saw the footage and you think that these are the right spring enhancements for you, stick around and I'll show you how easy they are to install. So before we begin the installation, I just wanted to show you a few things that when you pull this out of the box, these come fully assembled. Now, you will need what I'll call a couple of special tools, maybe something you may not have laying around. This is a 24mm wrench. This is going to be needed to tighten this spring down. Also, you're going to need a 10mm Allen or hex head for this. Other than that, everything is standard tools, and you got a 19 millimeter here. You're going to be using a 14 millimeter socket to tighten the spring down. On our particular truck, we have a 13 millimeter to remove the bump stop so that we could put our spacer in. Other than that, everything is pretty well straightforward. When you get this out of the box, like I said, it is fully assembled, but this gold colored rod will need to get threaded out first. They run this in just for shipping purposes so that they're not shipping this in a super long box. So we'll run this out, and the next step, we'll place this on our leaf spring. Now, we have our truck up on a lift just so we can film this, and it makes it easier for you. You can do this on your driveway, but there's a couple of things you need to know. One, when we're installing these, the axle has to be fully suspended. Now, you can do one side at a time. That's okay. It's recommended to do both sides at a time. So you can jack your vehicle up however you need to, either by the center of the differential here or at the frame. Get a couple of jack stands, whatever you need to do to make sure that the axle is hanging as far as possible. And then we can go ahead and place this unit on top of the leaf spring. So you'll see this end has a curve to it. It's actually going to go on the spring eyelet on the back side of the vehicle, and we're going to place this over the spring at the axle. And it simply sits up there. It loops over and sits up there. Okay, with the unit on top, the next thing you want to make sure is that this center bar here is going to be able to clear the front side of the axle. Well, in our case, we did. We loosened the gold rod enough that we have enough space to do this. So we're going to go ahead and loosen this up. And this will actually drop down. And then we'll reinsert it. Put the sleeve in the middle. And the next step is to tighten this down. There are no torque specs on this, but it just needs to be snug. So at this time, you'll take your 10-inch hex and your 19 millimeter socket and snug this up. Now, before we get too far, we're going to go ahead and remove our bump stop. On this particular truck, it's a 13 millimeter. Your truck may be 14 millimeter. They seem to vary from year to year, but it'll either be a 13 or a 14 millimeter. It's just a single bolt that threads up the middle. As you loosen this, it will loosen up. And you'll just take it down for now. You're going to have the bump stop and one single bolt. Save these. We're going to be reusing these later. Our next step is actually going to be to tighten the spring and put tension on it. We'll take our 24 millimeter wrench right now and we'll place it on the two lock nuts that they already have installed for us at the top. Then we'll take our 14 millimeter socket. We're going to go head to the middle of the axle because that's actually where we're going to be doing our tightening sequence. So our wrench is just hanging on the other end. We don't need a hand on it right now. It's really not going to go anywhere. What is important though, as we tighten this shackle is going to move forward and up. And what I like to do, I just like to place it where it needs to go right now. You want to make sure everything is centered along with the other side of the spring. Just make sure everything is centered on the leaf spring. And we'll take our 14 millimeter socket and start tightening this down. You can see as we tighten the spring how this bar slowly is rising. And so before it gets to the very top, we're going to double check and make sure we're centered. Let's go ahead and do that now. Okay. Now we've checked to make sure that we are centered at the far side and on this side. And we have made contact. Now we will begin to build tension. There's two settings available on these. There's a white disc. It works like a feeler gauge. There's a white disc that will slide as you tension this. The spring is going to separate, and the white disc will be able to slip down into the coils. That's for 25%. I think what the manufacturer says. More capacity, and then they have a black disc which is what we'll be using today for our install. That's 40% more capacity. Here's the discs I was talking about. If you happen to lose these, you can substitute a dime and a nickel. And if you don't like one setting, you can always change it to the other setting simply by turning this clockwise or counterclockwise. In the meantime, I'll continue to add tension and I'll keep checking with my disc. There's something to take note of as well. These two nuts right here, if you start running out of room, you're going to be watching this gap close as we tension the spring. If you need more room, just take your wrench. It's the same 24mm wrench, and we can run that backwards and run this backwards too. So just to show you right now, we are at the white gauge. And the black, which is what we're going for, you can see it's just not going in yet, so we'll continue to tighten. So we went ahead and kept torquing. As you can see, we're using the black one today, and I'm checking multiple spots and it fits up in there. With our springs at the setting that we like, we're going to go ahead and remove our 24mm wrench, and we're going to tighten our jam nuts. Now both of these need to be tightened this way towards the spring. We'll finger tighten that, just do one at a time. Then come back and you'll be tightening this nut against the other one. Okay. So now we're getting to the final step. The spring is torqued where it needs to be and set in place. Now, with the kit, we have an included bump stop spacer. It comes with a longer bolt and a shorter bolt, along with a cap screw. For our application today, we're going to be using the shorter bolt. This is the factory bolt. We'll be using that as well. We'll be taking the supplied shorter hex screw for our application. Yours might need the longer one. We'll take this and then the factory bolt. Drop that in the other side. This gets installed where the bump stop was. It has wheel, we'll be facing it towards the tire. Also, it has 2 roll pins. And these will be like alignment dowels. So those will go up into the frame, and we'll use the factory bolt that was holding the bump stop on originally. And it gets threaded up through the center hole. And again, there's no torque specs on this, just tighten it down snug. And next we'll take our factory bump stop, and the new bolt that we put in is going to be the one holding it on now. Again, we're going to have 2 alignment pins here to make sure that this bump stop goes on correct. And of course the correct way would be with the arch the same as the axle tube itself. We'll go ahead and install this as a 15mm. Make sure your alignment pins are in. Then just go ahead and snug this up. And that's it for the installation on the driver's side. Just go ahead, repeat the same process on the passenger side. When you're done, go ahead and lower your vehicle to the ground. And that'll do it for our look at the RoadActive Suspension Enhancement Kit on our 2021 Ford F-150.